They cut my salary the same week we crossed $3.2 billion in annual revenue. No warning, no meeting, just a dry email from HR. Subject line, compensation adjustment notification, delivered at 7:12 a.m. on a Monday. It sat wedged between a company-wide invite for a mindfulness webinar and a reminder for that afternoon's growth milestone toast. By noon, the 27th floor of Caldera Solutions was roaring with celebration. Gold streamers fell from the mezzanine. Someone rolled out a 3-tier cake. Champagne glasses clinked. A massive banner stretched across the open atrium. No.1 Cloud Platform North America. From a distance, it looked like a win. But up close, it stank of betrayal. I stood near the back of the crowd, cradling a glass of lukewarm brute, watching Lawrence, the CEO, do his rounds, like he'd engineered every database we shipped. He spotted me across the room, nodded, and walked over. "Elena," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder like I was a brand mascot. "It's been quite a run. Couldn't have done it without your blueprint." I kept my expression steady. "And the pay cut?" I asked quietly. Lawrence didn't blink. "It's a broader realignment," he replied. "Everyone's adjusting. Everyone, not quite." 5 minutes later, I overheard someone say that Dylan Lawrence's son and freshly minted VP of Client Ops just got a 20% salary bump. I was still swallowing that irony when a soft voice pulled me back. "Ms. Blake?" I turned. It was Rena, a wide-eyed intern from Michigan State who had shadowed me last quarter. "They said, you might not stay," she said softly. Is it true? She didn't mean harm. But the words hit like a tap to a bruise. I gave a small smile. "Nothing's guaranteed around here, Rena. You'll learn." She nodded, still holding a paper crown in her hand like it mattered. And just like that, it clicked. They weren't just celebrating the company's record quarter. They were celebrating my erasure. By the time I stepped back into my office, the hallway was quiet. The last strands of confetti lay limp on the carpet like leftover evidence of a party I didn't ask for. I shut the door gently, and the silence hit harder than the toast. The email still pulsed on my monitor. I reread the line again. This is part of a broader realignment to reflect new priorities. I built those priorities. I sank back into the high back chair I once believed I'd earned. Through the glass wall, I watched Rena laughing with the same cluster of executives who used to crowd around me for insight direction approval. She was young, vibrant, sharp in a way I remembered being. Before that sharpness dulled from constant pressure, late-night decks, and cleaning up other people's messes, just 3 years ago, Caldera Solutions was on the verge of collapse. They were losing enterprise clients left and right, drowning in overdue audits, and recycling outdated tools like a broken loop. I was brought in on a 6-month emergency contract to steady the decline. I stayed because I saw potential beneath the dysfunction. There was something real, something salvageable. I never asked for recognition, just runway. Time to fix what no one else could. I led the overhaul of their fragmented architecture, rewrote the software licensing model, introduced 3 of the clients they now build their marketing around. I was the architect, the strategist, the one who stayed behind after the lights were off, reworking pitches and product narratives while others took credit. Somehow, though, I became a ghost in my own story. They didn't erase me. They dimmed me bit by bit until I faded from the picture. Earlier this week, I submitted a revised growth deck detailing our Q2 drivers. It took 12 hours to chart the correlation between our new API nodes and a 48% uptick in client retention. Today, I opened the board version Lawrence sent out. My name had been scrubbed, where it once read, "Proposed by Elena Blake, Director of Platform Evolution." It now simply said, "Led by Product Team." It was clean, surgical, intentional. They weren't trying to destroy me. They were trying to dissolve me. Like sugar in boiling water, sweet for a moment, then invisible. The next morning, an HR invite landed in my calendar. Subject: strategic role transition discussion. No warning, no context. Just an 8:45 meeting in a sterile white room with 2 overly polite women who smiled like they were checking boxes. I wore the same navy suit I'd worn 2 weeks ago when I stood in front of a packed investor summit and showed them a path to 36% profit growth. Today, I was being asked to step aside from it. Plamses investors and mapped out our path to a 36% margin increase. Now I was being gently escorted into a so-called opportunity to foster innovation from a mentorship angle. We've noticed your strengths lie in vision setting and support, one of the HR reps said brightly, like it was a gift. With so many rising stars coming up the ranks, we think this could be a win-win if you transitioned into a more supportive role. Supportive, I echoed. Meaning, more behind the scenes, the other woman offered. Strategic, but not as forward-facing. Like? Stepping aside, I asked calmly. She nodded, tight-lipped. It's not a demotion. It's a repositioning. A chance to amplify newer voices. It shows real leadership. I could taste the metallic bite of resentment, but I kept my voice steady. And whose idea was this? A flicker of hesitation passed between them. Leadership once said, consensus. A lot of folks admire your contributions, Elena. But we believe it's time for a shift. I recognized the language. I'd spoken it myself once back when I held the authority to reorganize teams and shape future strategy. It was the corporate way of saying thank you for your service. Now kindly disappear. They ended the meeting with empty smiles, vague timelines, and the promise of a follow-up conversation. As I walked down the hallway, I passed the executive boardroom out of habit. My eyes glanced sideways. The glass wall wasn't frosted today. I stopped. Inside, I saw the familiar faces of the leadership team. The oak conference table, the projector, humming quietly. And there, seated confidently in the chair next to it, the chair that had been mine, was Rena. Hair pulled back, leather folder in front of her, nodding with ease as Lawrence leaned over, gesturing toward the latest market segmentation slides. That was my chair, the one where I'd defended budgets, negotiated international contracts, shut down bad strategies before they took root. Now, it belonged to someone who still asked IT how to change her email signature. I stepped away before anyone saw me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel visionary. I didn't even feel seen. I felt like a placeholder that had outlived its usefulness. I didn't go back to my office that afternoon. Instead, I went home. No calls, no meetings, just me, my old laptop, and the quiet that comes before a reckoning. I checked the contract dates again. Twice. That window, it was closing fast. The current license expired in 21 days. 3 weeks from today, Caldera Solutions would lose legal access to the software infrastructure that powered nearly 80% of its core offerings unless someone submitted a renewal form. Signed, approved, filed. No one had. Not yet. I scanned through my inbox searching for anything even close to a renewal request. Nothing. Then my sent folder. Empty. Then the company's shared drive. Still nothing. Finally, I checked the personal email Lawrence used whenever he wanted to bypass official channels. And there it was, buried under threads about off-site team events and quick favors. An email dated 7 weeks ago. Subject: need you to sign this eventually. Body: hey, just one of those vendor form things. We'll circle back. Don't worry about it yet. Attached was a PDF. Still unopened, still unforwarded. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. The timestamp blinked at me 7 weeks ago. No follow-up, no urgency. He hadn't bothered. He assumed I'd still be around, that I'd still be his fixer, his safety net. The silent engineer behind his glittering earnings call, the nameless engine behind his public reputation. I closed the laptop slowly. If this story stirred something in you, if you've ever felt the sting of being overlooked or the quiet fire of rebuilding from the shadows, then you're already part of what comes next. I'm just getting started. There's more to tell, more to reveal, and more quiet victories waiting to be named. So if you believe in stories that don't just entertain but empower, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. That way, when the next chapter unfolds, you'll be here for it. Not as a spectator, but as someone who knows exactly what it means to rise silently and strong. And something shifted in the room. The silence wasn't passive anymore. It was thick, heavy, like pressure just before a storm. For the first time in months, I didn't feel angry. I felt aligned. I didn't need to throw a fit. I didn't need to expose anyone. I just needed to let the clock do its work. Let the silence speak. Let one form go unsigned. No sabotage, no tampering. Just nothing. One unrenewed signature mine and Caldera's systems would grind into legal uncertainty. Not because I broke anything, but because they never thought to protect the one thing they took for granted. Me. One system. And everything they had built on top of me was about to collapse. Not because I broke it, but because they forgot to respect what held it together. It started with a line of code, just one. A gentle redirect hidden deep in a sync script that ran every night at 2:01 a.m. Nothing dramatic, just subtle. No one noticed. Not on day 1, not even by day 3. But by the end of the first week, strange behaviors began to ripple through the data layer. Slight delays in file retrieval, reports coming in with partial data, dashboards stalling halfway through loading. They looked like harmless bugs, the kind of hiccups you'd expect in a system growing too quickly for its own foundation. But I knew better. I built the foundation, and I didn't hack a thing. No sabotage, no malware, no violations. I simply began withdrawing what was mine, carefully, legally, quietly, line by line. Every endpoint tied to the infrastructure I'd created had a built-in expiration protocol, silent, automatic, and fully compliant with the original agreement. It wasn't revenge, it was insurance. And with the license set to expire in less than 3 weeks, I had every right to let it wind down. No alarms, no threats. Just silence doing what silence does best. Still, I didn't expect anyone to notice this early. But on Tuesday, at 9:42 a.m., an email landed in my inbox. Subject: weird pattern in usage logs. From N. Jenkins at calderasolutions.com, Body Hi, Elena. Sorry to bug you, but we're seeing some strange inconsistencies in the East Coast sync clusters. Latency spikes mostly. Logs show some packet loops and flowbacks. Feels weird, like something's folding back on itself. Almost like it's intentional. Could use a second set of eyes. Thanks. Noah Jenkins. Mid-level systems engineer. Smart. Observant. Too honest for his own good. I stared at the screen for a moment, then leaned back, my mouth curving into a quiet smile, somewhere between a sigh and a smirk. I didn't reply. I wouldn't. He wasn't my teammate anymore. He wasn't my colleague anymore. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence settle in. They were starting to feel the absence before it had even arrived. That's the thing about being erased. You learn to become invisible on your own terms. You learn the exits, the blind spots, how the lights are wired, how to make a room buzz without anyone knowing you flipped the switch. And when you finally decide to leave, you can extract your presence from the walls like breath from cold glass. I wasn't breaking anything. I was just reminding them what the system looked like without me. The ghost they dismissed was now the shadow in their machine. Every glitch, every sync delay, every frozen dashboard, that was me, waving from the dark. Then, at 10:06 p.m., a new message pinged on my personal line. No subject line, no signature, no body text. Just a familiar encryption string I hadn't seen in years, not since Berlin. Only one person still used it. Naira Eddings, CEO of Solvix Energy. A former rival. A former near boss. And the one person who once told me, "You don't need to outshine the system, Elena. Just outgrow it." I stared at the screen toothbrush buzzing faintly in my hand. Then I typed a single word, tomorrow. We met the next evening at a rooftop bistro in the downtown arts district. She was already seated, a chilled glass of Chablis at her side. Navy slacks crisp, white blouse cuffed perfectly at the wrist, professional without trying too hard. She rose as I approached, as if 4 years of silence hadn't passed between us. "Elena Blake," she said with a knowing smile. "Still allergic to press conferences. And you?" I replied, still picking restaurants with altitude. She raised a brow. Perspective. We both laughed, and just like that, the rhythm came back quiet. Familiar. Naira never wasted time. Within 10 minutes, we were leaning over a tablet between us, her fingers gliding across the screen, revealing Solvix's current infrastructure layout. We're at a breaking point, she said calmly. And I think you already know why. We're at a pivot point, Naira said, her eyes locked on the tablet. Our systems are outdated. We've tried patching, bolting. Buying third-party integrations, none of it sticks. She paused. But you? You built something that scaled Caldera into a powerhouse. Until they started cannibalizing themselves, I replied, not hiding the sting. Naira gave a slow nod, her lips pressing into a thin line. I followed the headlines. I recognized the glitches. I recognized the rhythm. She tapped the screen gently. That pattern. That's not failure. That's withdrawal. Controlled. Precise. Yours? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She leaned forward. We want ByTrace exclusive rights. Name your terms. I leaned back, watching the lights of the city flicker like a motherboard under glass. The offer was enormous financially, legally, emotionally. It wasn't just a deal. It was vindication. A chance to place my creation in the hands of someone who didn't just use it, but understood it. Someone who had once seen value in me back when I barely saw it in myself. But before I could speak, she added something that made me stop breathing. Or, she said, folding her hands on the linen tablecloth, would you prefer to lead the technology yourself under your own name? My breath caught. She wasn't offering a contract. She was offering a launch pad. You're not asking me to work for you, I said slowly. No, Naira replied. I'm asking if you're finally ready to stop building empires for men who can't even spell the word respect. The silence between us stretched long, comfortable, weighty. For the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. I didn't feel forgotten. I felt new. Give me 3 days, I said. You've got 2, she replied with a knowing smile. You're not the only ghost circling this machine. As I walked away from the rooftop, the city lights didn't look like barriers anymore. They looked like circuits, open, waiting, and I was ready to plug back in. Under my name, my terms, my rebirth. The last time I walked into Caldera Solutions, it didn't feel like a farewell. It felt like the end of a contract, one I never agreed to, but spent 3 years paying for with silence, brilliance, and someone else's name on my work. A temp named Darren sat behind the front desk. He gave me a lazy nod as I passed through security. I offered a faint smile. He didn't know, not really, that I was one of the reasons this building had survived 2 failed buyout attempts and a near collapse in 2021. I didn't go to my office. I headed straight to level B2, down a quiet corridor most executives didn't even know existed. The infrastructure access vault sat at the far end, behind reinforced steel doors under the watch of 2 cameras and a biometric scanner I'd designed myself. Only 6 people had ever been given clearance. I was still one of them. Inside, the air was cool, clinical. Server racks lined the walls, blinking steadily like the room itself was alive. In the back corner, embedded in the wall, sat a brushed aluminum safe box. I entered the code, paused, then turned the dial. Inside a black USB drive and a sealed envelope. I added one more item, my original schematic for ByTrace. Handwritten, annotated, dated. It wasn't just a technical blueprint. It was a blueprint for silence, what it would leave behind when it disappeared. Then came the final piece, a short letter printed in 14-point font on thick linen paper. No emotion, no drama, just fact. To whoever has the clearance and the humility to ask what happened, ByTrace was not abandoned. It was withdrawn, not out of spite, but out of principle. You broke the contract. And worse, you broke the trust. To regain access, start at line 338 in root cluster 3 and ask yourself who really wrote it. EB. I closed the safe, wiped my prints from the keypad, and left. On the way out, I passed Marcy, head of facilities. She looked surprised. You're an early Elena. Just clearing out the last of my things, I said evenly. She hesitated. Are you leaving? I nodded. It's overdue. She touched my shoulder gently. You made this place work, just so you know. That one hit deeper than she probably meant. Near the elevators, I spotted Rena, wide-eyed, energized. Coffee in one hand, a Solvix-branded tablet in the other. I blinked. Was she preparing to jump too? She rushed toward me. Miss Blake, she said softly. Are the rumors true? Rena asked, her voice softer now. I looked her in the eye. She wasn't naive anymore. Not after everything. Did we lose you? She asked. I smiled. No, you never had me. She stood frozen as the elevator doors closed between us. I didn't look back. As I stepped into the lobby, sunlight poured through the vaulted glass ceiling, landing across the company's mission statement etched in stone built on integrity. Driven by vision. They never understood what either of those words meant. But they would soon. Because some exits aren't escapes. They're entrances to something bigger. The first crack came at 8:07 a.m. A frantic Slack post from the DevOps channel, all dashboards stuck in loop. No revenue data, no ETA. Within 6 minutes, the finance team chimed in. Client portals down. Quarterly analytics inaccessible. Error 503s across the board. By 8:30, it wasn't just bugs, it was a pattern. And by 9:15, the entire East Coast infrastructure was unraveling. I wasn't there. Of course not. I was at a quiet corner cafe downtown, black coffee in hand, watching the alerts roll in through my personal diagnostic dashboard. A private version of ByTrace, the early troubleshooting suite I'd quietly built for myself years ago. They'd never thought to revoke my passive monitoring credentials. Every blinking red node was like an exhale. A letting go? I watched from a distance as my absence infected every corner of their operations. The data silos I'd built to be fault-tolerant started choking. Auto-scaling stalled. Systems that once bragged about 99.9% uptime were now frozen for 7, 8, 10 full minutes. Then, more. At 9:52, a message arrived from Noah Jenkins, the same engineer who'd reached out earlier about unusual sync patterns. It's spreading. Not just sync issues anymore. Entire segments are ghosting. Lawrence is asking questions. Don't respond, I know. Just, please tell me it's not beyond repair. I didn't reply. Because by now, it was Conference Hall C. The mood had shifted from denial to full-on panic. Lawrence had flown back early from Chicago, sleeves wrinkled, eyes, bloodshot rage simmering beneath the surface. Dylan, his son and VP of Client Ops, sat beside him silent for once. Rena, somehow present, hovered near the whiteboard, tracking live outage zones across the regions. Delaney Shaw, a senior VP of Operations, slammed her tablet onto the table. This isn't accidental, she snapped. This is targeted. Controlled withdrawal? Someone muttered. Nothing's being deleted. Just cut off. Another voice quiet, but sharp, asked the question hanging in everyone's mind. Did she do this? Lawrence looked up slowly. The room hushed like fog had just settled over the floor. Then he scoffed. Elena, he said. She's not that kind of woman. His voice dripped with dismissal, condescending, short-sighted. Wrong. He hadn't read the line I left folded in the vault. He hadn't imagined I'd walk away without theatrics. But I didn't need to break anything. I just stopped holding it together. At 10:41 a.m., Solvix released a teaser, a strategic partnership announcement in enterprise optimization. Within minutes, whispers turned into phone calls. 3 major contracts were paused. 2 were canceled outright. Stock dropped 4 points in less than an hour. Still, I didn't flinch. I just watched. Let them scramble. Let them chase shadows in code they didn't write. Let them feel what happens when you build your castle on borrowed brilliance and forget to renew the lease. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. It was balance. And it was only the beginning. At 11:05, the Solvix logo lit up across a massive LED screen behind a sleek glass podium. Inside the Tech Convention Center, the air buzzed with nervous anticipation. investors, analysts, journalists, and high-level executives shoulder to shoulder, clutching notepads, whispering guesses. Solvix had promised something unprecedented, a total reinvention of enterprise architecture. But no one knew what form it would take. Then, Naira Eddings stepped calmly onto the stage. Sharp, composed, in complete control. And already she was in control. "Thank you all for joining us today," Naira began, her voice strong but measured. "At Solvix, we've always believed that true innovation doesn't shout. It builds, it learns, it adapts quietly, persistently, until the right moment arrives." She paused. "That moment is now." The lights dimmed. The screen behind her flickered to life. A promotional video rolled flashes of fragmented industries, legacy systems, crumbling, overburdened data streams buckling under pressure. Then a shift. Clean dashboards, seamless optimization, precision under chaos. The footage sharpened into clarity. Then came the name, powered by Biventa. A sleek, silver-lined logo appeared new to most, but built on years of buried brilliance. And then, as the room held its collective breath, I stepped onto the stage. No fanfare, no music, just me, walking in a navy suit, the Biventa pin shining quietly on my lapel. I stood beside Naira, locking eyes with the audience, a sea of cameras and disbelief. "For those wondering where I've been," I said steadily, "I never left the system. I just rebuilt it." Gasps swept the room. "Biventa isn't just a platform," I continued. "It's the foundation behind what you're witnessing today, the Solvix Renaissance. The architecture, the engine, the scale, all of it. Designed, tested, secured by people who refuse to be erased. People like me." Across town in a Caldera conference room turned war room. Rena sat frozen at her desk. She'd skipped a meeting just to watch sensing something bigger than a product launch. Now her hands hovered above her keyboard. A tear slid silently down her cheek. On the screen, the live stream chat exploded. "Wait, is that the same Elena who vanished from Caldera? She was the system. Tell me they didn't fire her. Tell me she walked." Rena wanted to type the truth, but even now she wasn't sure if Caldera had ever realized what they'd done. Back at the convention, I closed my remarks with a steady calm. "I used to believe legacy was something granted," I said, "bestowed by others." I looked directly into the lights. "But I've learned legacy is something you reclaim. I've since learned legacy isn't something you're given. It's something you build." And this time, I was putting my name on it. The room erupted. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. A wave of realization crashed over the audience all at once. Solvix had just claimed the future, and I was its architect. I glanced at Naira. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Behind us, the Biventa interface illuminated the screen, sleek, precise. 3 words blinked beneath it: system authenticated. EB, not just initials, a signature, a reclamation, and above all, a triumph. The elevator doors opened to silence. No banners, no assistants waiting, no media wall lined with sponsor logos. Just a long corridor of glass and steel leading to the top floor of the Biventa Tower. My tower. At the end stood the office I had envisioned long before I ever signed a lease or assembled a team. Floor-to-ceiling windows, no slogans, no branding, just space, air, light. And the city spread below like circuitry. It was mine now, not as a contributor, but as a founder. I walked to the desk, elegant, simple. A matte black laptop sat closed. Beside it, a square cardboard box. I opened it slowly, already knowing what it held. The nameplate they'd removed from my door at Caldera Solutions. Tucked away. Never returned. Silently discarded. As if my name had expired. I lifted it from the box, brushed the dust away, and placed it on the shelf behind me, not as a reminder of failure, but as proof I had survived being erased and become something bigger because of it. A soft knock. Lana, my chief of staff, entered with her usual calm confidence, a tablet in one hand. Elena, she smiled. IPO paperwork is cleared. Beventa goes public in 10 days. I nodded. She handed me a second folder. This might interest you. The headline read, Former Caldera CEO under investigation for breach of fiduciary duty. Lawrence's face looked smaller than I remembered. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. And one more thing Lana added. Solvix wants permission to name you as Beventa's true founder. I smiled. Tell them yes. She left, and I turned toward the window. The city below pulsed with motion, unaware that everything had changed. Not with noise, not with chaos, but with quiet, focused, reclamation, no applause, no farewell speeches. Just me, my name, my system, and finally my freedom. I built something they tried to bury. And when they erased my name, I didn't fight for the spotlight. I reclaimed the system. Quietly, precisely, on my terms. If you've made it this far into my story, I want to ask you something personal. Have you ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told that your value had an expiration date? If so, I see you. Drop a comment below. Not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been told to step aside while someone else reaped the rewards of their work. Tell me how you came back stronger, or tell me how you're still holding on. Either way, your voice matters here. This space isn't just about revenge. It's about resilience, reclamation, reinvention. Here's the truth. No one tells you legacy doesn't have to come with applause. It's not defined by the corner office or the paycheck they cut you out of. It's the system you designed when no one was watching. The integrity you upheld when others took shortcuts. It's what survives you and what you choose to put your name on. If you're in the middle of your quiet transformation, stay the course. You don't need to yell to be heard. Sometimes silence speaks louder. Sometimes letting go is the loudest power move of all. And if you felt something in my story, share it with someone else who needs to remember that being forgotten isn't the end, it might just be the beginning. Subscribe if you believe in quiet power, in building without begging, and in rising with your name intact. Because you never know. The system you're quietly building might just be the one that reshapes everything. Elena.